Hello and welcome to a new episode of Connected from Home. The outbreak of COVID 19 can be stressful for a lot of people. Fear and anxiety about a new pandemic can be overwhelming and can cause strong emotions for both adults and children. Today we're discussing this vital issue with our expert, Dr. Charlotte Awad Kamel, Senior Psychiatrist Consultant and Chairperson of Bahrain Psychiatrist Hospital, Ministry of Health. Hello, Dr. Charlotte. It's an honor to have you with us in this episode of Connected from Home and a good opportunity for us to benefit from your expertise. So, from the cases that you witness every day, what is the impact of the outbreak of COVID 19 on people in Bahrain and the world?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Heba, for inviting me to this very interesting program. I want to tell you that I know it's a difficult time for people internationally and locally with COVID-19. But and you found from everyday life that there are various effects on people. You find some people who become stressed too much, some people moderate stress, and some, they try to cope with it as much as they can. And that, of course, depends on a lot of factors. Depends on the news going around, personality factor plays a role, and how much the person perceive what's going on around.
Okay, so are there like certain statistics or something, a study to tell us if the rates of depression, for example, increased, or fear or anxiety, for example, in Bahrain or the world?
Internationally, a lot of work has been done, and we are on the way to disclose some kind of research we are doing now. 50% of people are suffering from some anxieties, either, anxiety state, persistent, mild or moderate anxiety symptoms, or some people develop panic attacks from listening to the news every single time of the day. I wouldn't say depression, I will call it reactive depression, which is a temporary reaction or a transient reaction to news going around and worry too much about the situation, what will happen to them, what will happen to their loved ones, especially for people in isolation or quarantine, when they worry about their people and they live in isolation. But I found that in Bahrain, there is a lot of communication, especially via social media, which minimize to a great extent the effect of isolation on individuals. In addition to the great care, thanks to the government of Bahrain and the higher administration of all hospitals, and especially our Ministry of Health, played a big role in facilitating life of individuals. And we have created a hotline for psychological support, which has been distributed to all isolation and quarantine centers. The problems, I cannot say there are formal psychiatric disorders. No, most of the time, if a mother is separated from her children and put in quarantine or isolation, or the opposite, the child is in isolation, away from his parents. Some people are more vulnerable to this isolation. So the psychological support line, run by a very clever group of social workers, psychologists, nurses, and occupational therapists from psychiatric hospital, have played a big role in minimizing the effect, because it's available to all people in isolation and quarantine, so they can be able to phone and talk to a friendly voice on the other line that reassures them, correct the misperceptions about the COVID-19 and what's going on.
Yes, maybe even after recovery of the patient, is there like a certain professional support required, or maybe support by family members that should be given to the patient?
Of course, follow up after release from isolation and quarantine is very important. And there is a second line which started this week, where there is a 24-hour number for psychiatric support. I mean, after, the stage of acute stress, people can develop kinds of post-traumatic stress disorders when they can remember what happened, and the worries and the fear, it comes later on. So there is a line now. I don't want to mix it with the hotline, but it is psychiatric support. If anyone have any depressive symptoms or anxiety and want consultation, he can phone this line, and they can seek help, proper help, which is not a shame, because psychological support now all over the world is granted to people, is considered to be an essential part. Mind and body are one union. I mean, what affects the body affects the mind, what affects the mind affects the body. So it's not a shame at all. And especially in the Kingdom of Bahrain, I have been working here more than 30 years, and I have noticed great progress in erasing the stigma. Actually, for years, Bahrain was number one in the Arab world for psychological and mental health.
Speaking about positive life, I know our lifestyles nowadays changed dramatically.
Mhm.
And social distancing, I don't know, some people are really impacted. They feel lonely, they feel isolated. So, what are your advices to the people? How do you think the people can avoid fear and depression and those feelings of isolation?
Socialization is very important, of course, and communication, not only via social media and via face contact, joining groups, group support, support groups, joining, developing their hobbies to the maximum. Every individual should have one or two hobbies. And also, what helps people really is looking after other needy people. If somebody have problem, or somebody seek to help him, he will feel better in himself. The more we come out of ourselves, the more, it reflects positive attitude. And that's very available in the large number of voluntary societies and associations in Bahrain. I found this very, very common. The community, it's a nice place, and people have the cohesion of getting together, which is very important. So, trying to play more than one role in our life, trying to develop some activities, many activities, brings them in touch with people, following a healthy lifestyle, a healthy diet, very, very important. And if they have little bit of unhappiness or so, they can talk to somebody. It's not a shame.
If it's necessary for you to isolate or quarantine for some time, there are steps that you can take to reduce stress and care for your emotional well-being. 1. Maintain a healthy lifestyle. Eat healthy foods, drink sufficient water, maintain regular sleep patterns, and perform physical activity, even if you're limited by space. There are many exercises you can do with little to no equipment. 2. Keep in touch with your loved ones, at home, via telephone, email, or video calls. Try doing relaxation exercises such as breathing techniques, meditation, or mindfulness to reduce anxiety. Reading books or magazines will help you keep your mind busy and pass the time. 3. Seek information from reliable sources. This will help you evaluate risks and take reasonable precautions. Avoid listening to rumors and information from unverified sources. Make sure to follow the guidance of your local health authority, and for reliable information, consult the PAHO or WHO websites or any other websites provided by your national health authority. 4. To minimize your anxiety, limit the time you and your family spend watching or listening to news that you find upsetting.
Okay, so There are so many symptoms that can be identified as serious or maybe normal. For example, some people have sleeping disorders or eating disorders, um, and other things, maybe not being able to concentrate. So when do we identify those symptoms and say, oh my God, those are very dangerous symptoms and I should seek professional psychiatric support?
We have something very important in psychiatry. If the person is suffering, is presenting these symptoms, minimal suffering, and able to resume his roles, his daily roles in life, if the roles in life are not affected at all, it means that it is minimal or mild. Okay, but the cutoff line is the ability to play our daily roles in life. If we can work, be with our families, with our friends, resume our activities, it means that it's something transient and it can disappear, with time, little time, and by itself. But if the insomnia, lack of sleep, or depressive mood, or anxious mood, or obsessions, the presence of obsessions, obsessional thoughts and rituals, and if all this interrupts the individual life to carry his daily roles, it means that he can benefit from seeking some help. And this help could be few sessions. I mean, it doesn't mean long life, because there is a misconception among the public that, if you start anything psychological or psychiatry, it will continue for a long time. That's not true. I mean, it could be few sessions until things wear off.
We hear a lot of stories about COVID-19 patients being shocked at the beginning once they know that they are infected. Some have suicidal thoughts. Some people actually committed suicide. So it is that serious. So are doctors in Bahrain being equipped with special communication skills, or do they have proper awareness regarding such situations and how to deal with them?
Yeah, the family of healthcare workers in general is one family, and mostly we know each other, and support is given. As I said, now we have contacts with all, the professionals, and we try to encourage them if they want to ventilate or take some advice. And we have, many psychiatrists who help in various isolation and quarantine centers. So I'm sure that the message of support is spread throughout these doctors. The whole majority recover and resume its life normally. So looking at the positive aspects from healthcare worker view, and he can assure his patients that this is only a temporary time, hopefully. People, who have the bad outcome are the unfortunate ones with multiple problems originally, and other factors. So looking at the positive aspect is very important. Also, not listening 24 hours to the news from all over the world, because instead of having anxiety about one area, the anxiety can multiply. So, limit the amount of listening the news to only brief time, once or twice daily, just to know what's going on. For healthcare workers, they need periods of rest in between. They need to carry their roles normally, be in contact with their families, not reach a level of exhaustion. So this is very, very important for them. And to break news like this, in Bahrain, we haven't had maybe one or two threats, and it was only, a verbal threat, not a real threat, because the way it was dealt with was a swift, prompt reassurance and installation of hope, giving good news. So thanks God.
Okay, so we can go back to our homes. Children used to go to school, used to go to practice their sports and spend a lot of time outdoors.
Nowadays, most of those activities are cancelled. So, how do you think we can identify if they're suffering from stress or depression, and how can we overcome it?
It depends on how, the parents cope with this situation. So the WHO also have a lot of parental guidelines during the COVID-19 time, and the message has been spread around, and I think some parents cope very well. Some moms that devised a full program for their children, so the children feel even happy, and the attachment between some mothers and fathers, despite the unpleasant news of COVID-19. Some parents have reported, for example, fathers especially, they never played with their children, they never sat with them, they are busy at work, moms are the ones. But during this crisis, parents sat more with their children, interacted with them, and that's very important, to listen to them and listen to what they say, and structure their day, do activities together, sports together, discover the problems around. So that's one of the things I saw in many families, many families. And my colleagues who work in child and adolescent psychiatry reported the same. There hasn't been an increase in the number of kids suffering.
A lot of people worldwide keep on saying that they have very strange dreams. Not just nightmares, very, very strange, random dreams. So, is there an explanation?
Dreams usually is an expression of conflicts or some residuals in the mind. Could be from childhood, from adulthood. However, dreams is supposed to be a healthy phenomenon. And I want to tell you that when I'm treating a psychiatric patient, if he tell me I'm not dreaming at all, I get worried. But some people do dream and forget their dreams in the following morning. But we notice from our psychiatric patients who suffer from depression, anxiety, or major disorders, once they started to normalize, they started to report that the dreams have started. Okay, so dreams is an important function of the brain, which helps the mind to get rid of, extra worries and things stored which are not likable. If it's a repetitive, bad dream full of catastrophes and this, we have to evaluate the individual for possible depression or anxiety or other psychiatric problems.
A lot of people are suffering nowadays from emotional eating.
Yeah.
They keep on saying we're eating more whenever we feel bad, as if we're empty inside. We keep on filling it with food. And I think this is very unhealthy. So what's the solution?
The solution is that we deal with the emotions, because you said emotional eating. So it's they call it binge eating. Binge. They eat in binges. So we have to deal with the emotions. We have to see, what the individual opinion about food, about himself, about stresses. Some people cope with stresses. Their way of coping is different. Some people with eating, some people with fighting, some people with insomnia, and so on. So dealing with conflict is very important. So, people with emotional eating will require psychological sessions to sort out their emotions, because, and this is what I told you, cognitive behavioral therapy deals with how we think in our mind, how these ideas are translated into moods, because the way we think reflects on the way we feel. And then the way we feel reflects on the way we behave. So if I have a negative idea in my mind, it converts into a negative mood and consequently into a negative behavior, and then a vicious circle happens. The vicious circle is that, the behavior lead to bad bad thinking, the thinking to mood, and so on.
Okay, do you think that this period can be traumatizing for some people? How can they get over the trauma?
People should seek the truth and the facts from, trustworthy sources, like the World Health Organization. In Bahrain, the higher the Ministry of Health official statements, but to listen to all sorts of news from all over the world is sometimes confusing. And Bahrain occupy a very, high state in combating COVID-19. We have been praised by WHO. We have been praised by other countries. So it makes me proud really to live and work in Bahrain.
What are your advices to a person who wants to get over a trauma?
Some people have a lot of bad circumstances in their life, which makes them feel helpless. So any extra trauma breaks them down. And this is a very interesting, psychological theory called learned helplessness. People learn to be helpless. They will get the trauma and are unable to overcome it. Okay, and these people really, can develop depressions very easily. And when we treat depressed people, we start to look at what kind of learned helplessness they have and how we can, change this, attitude or knowledge they are internalizing.
Do you think that this can pass on to generations? For example, what happened, or maybe some people, I think, have changed behaviors. Their behaviors changed dramatically during this period. They became different persons. So do you think that this can pass on to future generations, or it's just a period and it's gonna end?
Well, we have to wait and see. Thanks for this question, but it's difficult to answer. We have to wait and see. After the age of 20, personality, everyone established his personality and his attitude to life, and mostly, he will spend the rest of his life with what was there during the first 19, 20 years of life.
The field of psychiatry and psychology is really fascinating. So can you tell us why you chose it and how?
That's a long story. I wanted to specialize in pediatrics actually when I started, because I felt I want to help children. But then I worked in a general hospital in the United Kingdom in a surgical ward. And there the children were suffering from serious physical problems. And I couldn't see them, suffering from permanent physical problems. And that time, some psychiatric patients used to be referred for surgical procedures. And I found myself sitting long time talking to these patients. So by the end of this job, I decided to go into psychiatry.
Yes, you're talented.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any last words before we end this interview?
I wish all the people of Bahrain all the health and happiness, especially during and after COVID-19 disappear. And I wish it disappears soon and we go all back to our normal routine and enjoy our lives as previous.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you with us in this episode of Connected from Home.
Thank you very much, Heba, Mrs. Heba, and best wishes. I enjoy doing the program with you.
Me too, very much. Thank you so much.
This is the end of today's episode. Wish you all good mental health and well-being. I know it's tough, but we'll get through this. Stay strong. See you next week and stay home, stay safe.